Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so that you know when live we go. Hello and welcome to RAU'S IAS DNS session. We are going to have a discussion on today's newspaper, The Hindu, Delhi edition dated 14th March 2022. We shall take up articles important for civil service examination and discuss them as per the demand of the exam. This is the editorial article from page number 6. We'll not get into the news of the article, but we'll discuss one thing that this is the editorial article from page that is substantive justice. The editorial article has based its view on a principle in the legal jurisprudence, which is substantive justice. There are many theories of justice. Justice is the most fundamental requirement for any organized, stable, peaceful society. Aristotle has said that it is in justice that the ordering of society is centered. Martin Luther King Jr. has said that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Amartya Sen has said that virtually all the problems of this world is rooted in one or other form of inequality, meaning absence of justice. Justice leads to equality. This sense of equality or the sense of absence of relative deprivation is essential for any form of fraternity, any social cohesion to exist, for formation of social capital in society. When we have these, only then value of tolerance and hence empathy and compassion can take roots, and only then there is a possibility of peaceful society. Peace, which is the ultimate end of all moral philosophies, all theories of good governance, all public administrative principles, fundamentally requires justice. In discussion of justice, a distinction is drawn between procedural justice and substantive justice. You always study substantive justice in comparison to procedural justice because these are two parallel ideas, and to understand one, a comparative study with the other is important. Procedural justice refers to fairness or impartiality in the process. Impartiality in the procedure through which a law or political decision is arrived at and is applied. Meaning the procedures, the law, the ideas, they should not be discriminatory. But substantive justice refers to fairness of content. The fairness of laws, policies, decisions, the fairness of their fundamental basis. So procedural justice is about application. The law should be applied in the letter and spirit. It should not be applied on a discriminatory basis. The legal codes should not be violated. The procedures must be just. But substantive justice, on the other hand, is concerned with the content of the law. What if the law itself is discriminatory? During the Holocaust, the German officers were following the orders. There have been racially discriminatory laws in many countries, and the honest application of those laws will result in discriminatory outcome. So substantive justice is about outcome. The legal principles created by the sovereign authority, the parliament, and the courts needs to be regarded as just. So the law itself must pass the test of fairness. The moral and the cultural values of the society in which the law is created are influential in determining whether the law is regarded just or not. For example, law on abortion. The strict application of the law is procedural justice, meaning the law should not be cut slack for one person and applied strictly for the other person. That non discriminatory nature of application itself is procedural justice. But whether the law should exist or not on abortion, or in what manner and the form it should exist, that is the business of substantive justice. You remember from the knowledge of your world history, the catalyst for the American War of Independence was the British government's decision to impose a tax on tea imported into the American colonies. That law was passed by the British Parliament. The American colonists, they regarded this as unjust, as they had no right of representation in the British Parliament, and therefore no say in the imposition of taxation. And hence the slogan came, no taxation without representation. So they questioned the content of the law itself. So according to them, that was against the principle of substantive justice. Similarly, in India, you will remember lately that Supreme Court has struck down many provisions of IPC and CRPC. One of the most famous one was in the Shreya Singhal case concerning Article 124A. The government was using this clause to curtail freedom of speech. However, it's a different thing that even procedural justice was not being followed because this provision was being used strictly in certain cases, and some people were just being cut slack even when they were resorting to hate speech. So we can say that the procedural justice is concerned with the letter of law. And substantive justice is concerned with spirit of law. The concept of procedural justice is also seen from the perspective of right based, and substantive justice is seen from the perspective of need based. Procedural justice derived from right to equality, right against non discrimination. Substantive justice is based on the need of existence of reasonableness, prevalence of the principle of natural justice. Technically, these things are seen in two phrases. Procedural justice is about procedure established by law. This idea came from the legal jurisprudence of England because there the parliament is sovereign, the parliament is supreme. Substantive justice is about due process of law. This is an American concept where judicial review is given due importance. Substantive justice is considered to be more mature concept than procedural justice. The idea of procedural justice inspires minimal state, meaning restriction on discretion of the state. And this idea of limitation on the discretion of state is later developed in the idea of rule of law. Article 21 of Indian Constitution contained the provision only for procedure established by law. But Supreme Court found this clause inadequate, and over the period of time, the concept was expanded, and the ambit of Article 21 also started to include due process of law. See, the expression due process of law does not find mention in the Indian Constitution. However, due process can be inferred through Article 14, 19, 20, 21, and 22 all put together. Indian judiciary has played very creative role in this regard. Supreme Court of India has considered the procedure established by law in the Article 21 to be equivalent to the concept of due process of law. Article 21, interestingly, in the draft form of the Constitution, was Article 25. And then it provided that no person shall be deprived of his or her life or liberty without the due process of law. But the drafting committee at a later stage proposed the substitution of the expression except according to procedure established by the law. This change of phrase by the drafting committee from due process of law to procedure established by law was on the ground that due process of law gives a scope for judicial supremacy to determine the content of the law, which is likely to create confusion and hurdles in the social transformation. But Supreme Court in the A.K. Gopalan case held that Article 21 is complete code and procedure established by law need not comply with the principle of natural justice and reasonableness under Article 19. So the court decisively rejected the application of due process of law under Article 21. Principle of natural justice and the principle of reasonableness are established principles under Indian legal jurisprudence now. The court in this case specifically pointed out that as long as a person was detained according to procedure established by law, he could not challenge his detention. The outcome will be that justice will be delayed, and justice delayed is justice denied. So, on the plank of substantive justice, Article 21 must include the concept of due process of law. Since Article 21 is a complete code, it cannot exist without the concept of substantive justice. So, even though the article does not mention substantive justice, but still it is a complete code. So, due process of law is inherent in Article 21. This was declared in the A.K. Gopalan case, but later judiciary flipped its own view. In the bank nationalization case, Supreme Court said that fundamental rights are bundles of interconnected rights, and Article 21 in itself is not a complete code. But the thing is, the view given by the Supreme Court in A.K. Gopalan case formed the dominant view of judiciary over the period of time, and this took a complete shape in Menka Gandhi case in 1978. And now Menka Gandhi case is considered to be the starting point after which there has been no reversal. The starting point for introduction of due process of law clause implicit in Article 21. Substantive justice is justice in the fuller dimension and not just the demonstration of equality and fairness in the system. Amartya Sen has pointed out in his book, Idea of Justice, that a law is not about only niti, meaning rules, but it is also about nyaya, meaning justice. So law should not be just concerned about procedure. It must also be concerned about the process. It must also be concerned about the due process in making up the law. Law is not only for imposing, convicting, or acquitting the accused, but it is also to see whether those outcomes are just and fair. So there are a few things here. See, under Article 21, it is said that Article 21 is a complete code. So it must include due process of law. Article 14 concerns about non-discrimination, equality before law. And non-discrimination and equality could exist only when the executive action is non-arbitrary and reasonable. So this principle of non-arbitrariness and reasonableness have been derived out of Article 14. This essentially is the basis of a rule of law. Rule of law and the due process of law, they combines to give up the concept of principle of natural justice. Principle of natural justice basically has two very important components. No person can be the judge of his own cause, and conviction should not be done without hearing. Now, it sounds very different thing from what we have been discussing, but fundamentally, the requirement of natural justice is non-arbitrariness and reasonableness. Because of these, the person should not be the judge of his own cause. Because if he's judging his own cause, then the principle of reasonableness and non-arbitrariness and the integrity of the process of judgment may not be ensured. And same thing is required for the conviction not to be happening without giving a proper hearing. So the due process of law was not there in the constitution by name, by term, by phrase. Nor principle of non-arbitrariness, principle of reasonableness, principle of natural justice, principle of rule of law were not there. These are the derived concepts. And all these concepts get culminated in the modern concept of good governance. This article is from page number 1. PM briefed on the missile issue and the review situation. Prime Minister Modi has held a meeting on the Cabinet Committee on Security. It has been reported that the Prime Minister was updated on the issue related to war in Ukraine, the defense situation in our neighborhood, the recently carried out Operation Ganga, and also it has been reported that the Prime Minister was updated regarding the firing of missile, the accidental firing of missile around 124 km into Pakistan in their Punjab province. The detail of the discussion as such we cannot know and we should not know. From the examination perspective, we'll discuss on Cabinet Committee and especially on Cabinet Committee on Security. See, in June 2014, Government of India reconstituted 6 cabinet committees. Cabinet Committee on Appointment, Cabinet Committee on Accommodation, Cabinet Committees on Economic Affairs, Parliamentary Affairs, Political Affairs, and Cabinet Committee on Security. Whenever a new government comes in, they can reconstitute the cabinet committees. They are standing committees. Apart from reconstituting 6 already existing committees, the government also constituted 2 new cabinet committees, Cabinet Committee on Investment and Cabinet Committee on Employment and Skill Development. The constitution of Cabinet Committee is not done as per the constitutional provision because these cabinet committees are not provided for in the constitution. They are extra constitutional bodies. They are not mentioned in the constitution. However, the rules of business provide for their establishment, and the executive work of Government of India is carried out according to the Transaction of Business Rules 1961. These rules themselves have emerged out of Article 77.3. Clause 3 of Article 77 says, "The President shall make rules for the more convenient transaction of the business of the Government of India and for the allocation among ministries of the said business." And according to this provision, the Transaction of Business Rules 1961 has been framed, and this rule mandate the minister in charge of a department or of a ministry to dispose all business allotted to the department under him or her. But Article 77.3 also says that when a subject of a case concerns more than one department, no decision can be taken until all such departments have concurred, or failing such concurrence, a decision thereon has been taken up or under the authority of Cabinet. And hence came into being Standing Committee of the Cabinet. Prime Minister is the authority for constituting the Standing Committee of Cabinet. He can create committees, dissolve committees, he can restructure the membership of the committee, he can do anything. And apart from the Standing Committee on Cabinet, there are ad hoc committees of Cabinet called as Group of Ministers. They are constituted to look into any specialized issue, any burning issue, and after dispensing their role, the body is dissolved. Cabinet committees are an organizational device to lessen the enormous workload of the cabinet. Apart from coordination, the purpose of cabinet committee is also to lessen the workload on the cabinet. They facilitate an in-depth examination of any policy issue, just like the parliamentary committees perform the function for the Council of Ministers. So they are based on the principle of division of labor and effective delegation. The scope of any cabinet committee will be decided by the Prime Minister himself. Sometimes they not only resolve issues and frame proposals and give recommendation to the cabinet, but they can also take decisions. But the cabinet can, of course, review the decision. The Cabinet Committee on Security of Government of India is a body that discusses and debates issues concerning national security, defense policy, expenditure of defense, and any matters of India's national security interest. And the Cabinet Committee on Security is the final decision making body on these issues. So it has to be headed by the Prime Minister because in parliamentary form of government, the buck stops with the Prime Minister. Apart from Prime Minister, the major four ministry that you would know of, the concerned ministers are the member. Minister of Defense, Minister of Home Affairs, Minister of Finance, and Minister of External Affairs. There are 5 members in the committee, but the National Security Advisor, the Cabinet Secretary, and the Defense Secretary, they also attend the meetings, but they are not the members of the Cabinet Committee on Security. Cabinet Committee on Security can take up any issue related with defense. For example, in January last year, the Cabinet Committee on Security has cleared the purchase of Tejas Mark 1A. It's a light combat aircraft. The purchase of Tejas Mark 1A was cleared from Hindustan Aeronauticals Limited. So any such clearance is given by Cabinet Committee on Security. The committee deals with any issue concerning law and order and national security. Any international deals in which India may not also be involved but that impact India's national security. The committee also take up, remember, the political issues that revolve around the nation's security. From time to time, the committee evaluate the national security apparatus, and if need be, they bring changes in the national security architecture. Any capital expenditure of more than rupees 1000 crore of Department of Defense production and Department of Defense research and development needs to be cleared from Cabinet Committee on Security. Matters related to atomic energy is also discussed by Cabinet Committee on Security. Cabinet Committee on Appointment is one of the most powerful cabinet committee. This committee is also headed by the Prime Minister. The only other member in this committee is the Ministry of Home Affairs. Previously, the concerned ministry to which the appointment was being made and the Minister of State of that concerned ministry also used to be the member or participate in the meeting proceeding. But now it's only a 2-member body, the Prime Minister and the Home Minister. Of the 8 cabinet committees that exist today, 6 are headed by the Prime Minister. Cabinet Committee on Accommodation, this is headed by the Union Home Minister. And Cabinet Committee on the Parliamentary Affair, this is headed by the Defense Minister. Rest all the 6 are headed by the Prime Minister. Appointment to all the key positions under the Union government is made through the Cabinet Committee. That includes the Chiefs of Army, Navy, Air Force, the RBI Governor, Solicitor General, Chief Vigilance Officer, the Secretariat appointments, and appointment of officers of rank equivalent or above of Joint Secretary. So the committee would also look into the issue of disagreement. Disagreement on appointment could be in the search cum selection committees that exist for appointment for various posts. Disagreement could also be between the recommendations given by UPSC and the concerned department or the ministry. The other issues of appointments like the extension of tenure, the issue of appointing an officer after the retirement age, or the lateral shift of officers, or the intercadre deputation, or the transfer of all India service officers, or the matter of taking representation or appeal from officer of the rank of Joint Secretary or above. And there are other functions revolving around the issue of appointment. Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, they review on a continuous basis the economic trends, the problems and prospects of economy, and evolve an integrated economic policy framework for the country. So the membership of Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs is very large. More than ministers from more than 10 ministries are the members. The job of the committee include to direct and coordinate all activities in the economic field requiring some policy decisions. For example, the issue of foreign investment. The committee has to deal with matters relating to fixation of prices of agricultural products. So the job of fixing prices under MSP also comes under this committee of cabinet. Not only agricultural products, The price control in respect to industrial raw materials and products is also the job of this committee. The committee has to deal with matters relating to fixation of prices of essential commodities as well. Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs lay down priorities for the public sector investment. This committee review the performance of central public sector enterprises and consider the cases based on these reviews for any structural reorganization of the enterprise or financial restructuring. The issues related to rural development is considered by Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs. The policy matters for small and marginal farmers, that is also considered by this committee. The committee review the accomplishment of all the ministries, agencies, all public sector enterprises regarding implementation of the flagship program of the government. Of course, this committee will naturally be looking also into the issues like divestment. The issues revolving around PDS as to the measures required to make PDF system more efficient and effective, and also to determine the prices of articles to be supplied through PDS. And some other issues like issues relating to Unique Identification Authority of India, that is also taken up by the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs. Cabinet Committee on Investment and Growth will take measures to promote investment and growth. For example, measures aimed at increasing the import substitution, to accelerate capital inflows into the country, to improve ease of doing business ranking, to fast track the approvals for concerned projects, and also to look after the implementation of ongoing and the proposed new projects. Cabinet Committee on Parliamentary Affairs, this is headed by Minister of Defence. The prime job of the Minister of Defence while heading the Cabinet Committee on Parliamentary Affairs is to watch the progress of government business in the Parliament. This committee looks after the resolutions to be presented in the Parliament. This committee looks after the legislations made by the state government from an all India point of view. And the proposal to summon or prorogue the Houses of Parliament is also considered by the Cabinet Committee on Parliamentary Affairs. Cabinet Committee on Political Affairs deals with problems relating to center-state relations. They also consider economic and political issues that have to be judged with a wider perspective on an inter-ministerial level. And the Cabinet Committee on Political Affairs also looks after the policy matters concerning foreign affairs. But those matters should not be dealing with external or internal security implication, because such issues concerning security implications are discussed in the Cabinet Committee on Security. The Cabinet Committee on Employment and Skill Development will look after the issues of employment and skill development, and the Cabinet Committee on Accommodation governs the allotment of government accommodation. Cabinet Committee on Accommodation is headed by Home Minister. So except for the Cabinet Committee on Parliamentary Affairs, which is headed by the Minister of Defence, and the Cabinet Committee on Accommodation, which is headed by the Home Minister, rest of the 6 Cabinet Committees are headed by the Prime Minister. There is an article on the text and the context page, Understanding Citizens' Reluctance to Pay Taxes. The content of this article as such is not relevant for the exam. It talks about the psychology of taxpayers. From the exam perspective, let's reorient it and discuss the payment of direct tax or the revenue collection of the government via direct taxes.
The overall picture of gross tax revenue looks like this. I don't know if you're able to see this picture clearly, but the picture is this. In the gross tax revenue, 55% is direct tax, 45% indirect tax. Out of this 55% of direct tax, corporate tax is around 28%. And income tax, including the security transaction tax, is 28%. So immediately you must freeze 2 things in your mind. In the gross tax revenue, direct tax share is more than indirect, which is a good thing. Because taxation slab in direct tax is progressive. The more is your income, the higher percentage of tax applies to you. In indirect tax, everybody pays the same tax. If you buy a packet of biscuit, you or any other person much richer than you pays the same tax. So number 1, direct tax composition in the gross tax revenue is more than the indirect. And this is the case only since last few years. And number 2, in the direct tax composition, the corporate tax is more than income tax. And let me tell you number 3, the direct tax collection has been increasing year on year consistently till the financial year 2018-19. In the financial year 2019-20, however, there was a dip in direct tax collection by around 5%. And in the financial year 2020-21, as we have seen already, there has been increase in the direct tax by around 5%. So barring this financial year of 2019-20, the direct tax has been increasing year on year in the last decade. In the financial year 2019-20 and in the preceding year, government took lots of tax reform. There were many tax reductions, and the tax refund by the government was also very high that year. Because of that, the revenue dipped. So the reason for the fall in the tax revenue collection in the financial year 2019-20 is the same as the reason for the rise in direct tax revenue collection for the financial year 2020-21. And they are related to the tax reform that the government has taken in the preceding 2 years. One of that is tax rate reduction. The corporate tax has been reduced to 22%. New manufacturing domestic companies, for them, the tax rate has been reduced to 15%. The minimum alternate tax rate has been reduced from 18.5% to 15%. Minimum alternate tax were introduced through the Finance Bill of 1987, but it was implemented for the year 1988-89. It was withdrawn in the year 1990 and reintroduced in the year 1996. The idea was that many companies, they used to take tax rebate through the various provisions that government offers, and their tax liability reduced to around zero. They paid very little tax or absolutely no tax. So this concept of minimum alternate tax was brought, so that some minimum tax must be paid by all companies. Then government exempted for income tax individuals whose earning less than rupees 5 lakh. The standard deduction was also increased from rupees 40,000 to rupees 50,000. Through the Finance Act of 2020, dividend distribution tax was removed altogether. This is the tax that you have to pay when companies share profit in the equity market with you. The immediate effect of all these tax reduction was the direct tax revenue fell. The direct tax revenue fell in the succeeding year. But also the direct tax revenue increased in the next succeeding year. There has been an estimated increase in the corporate tax by rupees 1.45 lakh crore and in the personal income tax by rupees 23,200 crore. This increase has been on account of tax reduction. You must have heard of Laffer curve. This curve shows the relation between the tax rates and the amount of tax revenue collected by the government. If you keep the tax rate very low, obviously the tax revenue collection will be low. But also if you keep the tax rate very high, the tax revenue collection will be low. Because if you put very high burden on people, people will do tax avoidance. Perhaps the Indian economy was somewhere here. When you reduce the tax rate, tax revenue collection automatically increased. Government of India also has come up with other reforms. For example, Vivad se Vishwas scheme. Under this scheme, people can come clean with regard to their income tax returns. There will be complete waiver on interest and penalty. You just have to pay the tax for the stipulated period. Due to digital transactions, the tax base also has increased. The number of people filing tax returns have enormously increased. Tax reforms also has been done to increase the ease of filing tax. So the cumulative effort of all these tax reform is that the direct tax buoyancy has increased. It has been estimated by the Finance Ministry that the tax buoyancy for direct tax is around 1.12. For corporate tax, it is around 1, and for personal income tax, it is 1.32. Tax buoyancy shows the growth in the tax revenue compared to the growth in GDP. And in this challenging time of COVID-19 pandemic, if the tax buoyancy is higher for direct tax, that means that the tax collection administration is healthy. The reforms that the government has taken is yielding results.
The answer to yesterday's question, which was the term alpha girl and 10 gene pigs, they were recently in news and they are related to what? They are related to, of course, xenotransplantation. Today's question of the day is this. Consider the following statements with regard to tax buoyancy. Statement 1. When a tax is buoyant, tax revenue increases without increasing the tax rate. Statement 2. Tax buoyancy is higher for direct taxes than indirect taxes. And which statement is our correct? 1, 2, both, none. Thank you very much for being with me. Goodbye. Take care.